Friends, it's wonderful to be with you, if not physically, at least by the miracle of this new wonderful video and internet technology. And I have to say that although every technology brings with it dangers, it also brings with it spiritual possibilities. And what this technology tells us is that physically we can be far apart, and yet spiritually we can be incredibly close. I may be several thousand miles away from you at this moment, but I feel so spiritually close that I can't begin to tell you. I love the Syrian Jewish community in New York. I admire this wonderful organization of the Sephardic Community Alliance. You are one of the most joyous and wonderful Jewish communities I have met anywhere in the entire world. And there is something about your ability as Sephardim to be incredibly loyal to your past and at the same time live very openly and constructively toward the future. In fact, that's a value you must teach the rest of the Jewish world, indeed the rest of the world, full stop, because it is people who have a strong sense of connection to the past who can face the future without fear. And that's what we have to do right now. I cannot imagine any subject more important than the one you are dedicating yourselves to today. The challenges young Jews face when they go to university. And those challenges are essentially of two forms. Number one, the universities these days in the West are quite hostile to religious values. And secondly, they are becoming increasingly hostile to the state of Israel. Let's take those two challenges separately. Number one, the challenge to religion. Well, I find it very interesting. I know a fair number of the new atheists, and many of them are Darwinian biologists. Now, this is extremely interesting because if Darwin was right, then the test of fitness, of adaptiveness, of success is that you survive in the long run. You hand on your genes to the next generation. Now, when it comes to surviving, no culture in the world, certainly not in the West, has done so more effectively than Judaism. In fact, although the universities today are quite secular, we have no evidence in all of history of a purely secular society being able to survive for very long. Two of the greatest civilizations in history, ancient Greece, Athens, ancient Rome, who had incredible artistic, scientific, and technical powers, nonetheless lacked faith. They lacked a compelling religious identity. And the result is they flowered briefly for a couple of centuries and then disappeared from the face of history. Jews have never disappeared. And if that is not a test of the correctness of their values, even by the standards of Charles Darwin, I don't know what is. So hold fast to your faith, because it's an essential part of what it is to be human. Science, technology, however wonderful they become, can never really answer the three questions every one of us must ask at some stage in our lives. Who am I? Why am I here? How then shall I live? No religion has answered those questions more powerfully or movingly than Judaism. So hold fast to your faith. The assault on Israel, though, is very, very difficult and dangerous. And it is quite strange, if you think about it, that Israel is the only country in the entire Middle East that has successfully managed to create a democracy, a free society, with a free press and an independent judiciary. It's the only one in the entire Middle East that's managed to stand up for these basic human and moral values. And yet it is the only one that is systematically condemned by everyone from academics and student bodies all the way to the United Nations. The truth is that Israel should be a symbol of hope to anyone in the world. After all, it has taken an ancient language and made it speak again. It has taken a desolate landscape and made it bloom again. It has taken a battered, shattered people the Jewish people from all over the world and made it live again. It really should be a beacon of hope. And those who are against Israel are ultimately against freedom, independence, and hope itself. Friends, let's be very blunt about it. What is wrong with the BDS movement is that it fails to recognize that time and time and time again, Israel has offered peace and indeed sovereignty and independence to the Palestinians, and it has been turned down every single time. It tried to do so after the United Nations vote that brought Israel into being on the 29th of November, 1947. It refused to do so when David Ben-Gurion made the offer of peace the day he proclaimed the state on the 14th of May, 1948. In 1967, after the Six-Day War, when Golda Meir offered peace, she was met by a blanket, famous statement, the three no's, by all its Arab neighbors: no to peace, no to recognition, no to negotiation. And it also turned down, the Palestinians turned down, the most generous offer of peace ever made in the history of the Middle East. In 2000 and 2001 at Camp David and at Taba, Israel, under the prime ministership of Ehud Barak, offered the Palestinians 97% of Gaza and the West Bank, compensation for the other 3% by territorial changes, and East Jerusalem as their capital. I once had a chance to discuss this with Bill Clinton, who chaired those talks, and he said to me that Ehud Barak had offered the Palestinians more than he thought he would, and more than he thought he should. So Israel's most generous offers have been declined by the Palestinians. So the BDS movement, when it says that Israel is the obstacle to peace, is telling a lie, and a serious and powerful lie. And we have to stand up and say it isn't so. But let me tell you what the real issue is. The BDS movement, like all opposition to Israel, totally mischaracterizes the conflict. It sees it as a zero-sum game. Either the Palestinians win and the Israelis lose, or the Israelis win and the Palestinians lose. Therefore, you have to support one or the other. Now, that is absolutely and clearly untrue. Because the truth is, from peace, both sides gain. From violence and war, both sides lose. Therefore, if you care about the Palestinians, you have to care about the Israelis also. You have to give a fair hearing to both sides and get them to work together. And that fair hearing is precisely what the BDS movement opposes with all its might. And that, I'm afraid, is what makes me call the new anti-Zionism the new anti-Semitism. It's not the old anti-Semitism. It's different, it's a mutation. But it can be stated very simply. In the Middle Ages, Jews were hated for their religion. In the 19th and 20th century, they were hated because of their race. Today, they are hated because of their nation state. All in all, it is the same horrendous hatred, that blanket refusal to allow Jews the right to live in freedom, independence, and without fear. We care about the Palestinians, we care about peace. But to do so, you have to support Israel, because you have to support both sides. Justice involves hearing both sides. So I salute you in your efforts to prepare your students for these two great challenges. Take this very seriously indeed. And by preparing your students, you will give them the strength they need, not only to come through university with their faith in Judaism and the Jewish people in Israel intact, but also with the kind of faith that will renew Jewish life yet again in the generations yet to come. So thank you for what you're doing. Continue to be the wonderful community that Elaine and I love. We love every visit we make to you. Be strong, be wise, and prepare our children for the challenges of the times to come. And then our children will stay strong and be a blessing to the Jewish people and to the world. Wishing you Hatzlacha Rabba, every success.